a movie where I'm going to have to be super vague in the synopsis because telling you too much will give away the game somewhat. The movie opens with, we have this kind of cafe out in the kind of the snowy American wilderness somewhere, and a guy stops off to get something to eat, and there's one kind of lone waitress in there. And then this lone waitress's kind of ex-husband turns up, who is clearly kind of somewhat abusive, and the customer then sort of defends the waitress, and that sets up our kind of status quo with our two kind of principal characters. And then we have a story, very much a character dialogue driven story, that is about serial killers, it's about supernatural forces, it's about kind of wits and kind of circumstance. It's kind of all I'll say on it. So let's discuss what I can, at least, with this movie, Cold Meat. Now, what works in this film? It's obviously a character-driven movie, as I've said, and the character-driven movies that work are kind of dependent mainly on two things: strong writing and strong performances. And I'm pleased to say this movie excels in both of those categories. There's not a huge cast on this movie, but the characters that we do have, I think, do give strong performances, believable performances, and multi-layered performances. Again, I want to be vague in regards to specifics, but I suffice to say you will have changing emotions whilst watching this movie, and understand things as kind of reveals are kind of given to us on screen, and that is delivered by some great performances by the actors involved. Also, again, very much how Tarantino has built up his career, the writing here is the first building block in making a movie like this. And I've seen movies that have failed in regards to this, but this one, I'm pleased to say, gives us an interesting kind of story arc that delivers, a captivating movie without necessarily having lots of spectacle on scene. But we have interesting character turns, we have interesting motivations, interesting dynamics, peppered through this movie, sporadic kind of, I don't want to say action sequences, so to speak, but kind of, there are a couple of more violent moments in the film, let me just say. So that gives it this kind of, this great thriller element. It's obviously a relatively low budget movie. It's kind of like, half of this movie takes place in a car. And it's, as I say, it's a dialogue driven movie. But it looks, it's the whole point of this movie is we have effectively a big storm, which is causing problems for everyone. And this storm looks bad. It looks terrible. It's done very well. And it looks like they must have frozen their asses off making this movie. And again, I don't want to tell you the context about what actually happens, but, suffice to say, it's a real problem. Let me just say that. And it's a real problem. And it looks like one of the kind of the worst storms that you've seen in films. And then we have this interesting kind of supernatural element. It's very underplayed. It's kind of subtle, and it doesn't have a huge presence in the film necessarily. However, it does give it this kind of, what it does do is have this X factor, I guess you want to say, that is out there, and it's a kind of a recognised supernatural force, shall we say, that plays an important role and gives it this kind of otherworldly feel to it. This is a hard movie to kind of tell you too much about because it's such a kind of like, there's a big reveal that happens, and I don't want to spoil it. Suffice to say, it's a great character-driven movie. It's very much a well-crafted film in a kind of enclosed, claustrophobic environment that I think really is a coming together of great writing and directing and performances. and kind of like these little punctuated moments that kind of amp up the kind of the tension here. What doesn't work? It might be a little slow for some. Like I said, there's not really any set pieces or large scale kind of like action or even kind of a huge amount of location changes here. It's very much just like I said, a dialogue driven movie. So that might be, I mean, for me, I thought it was still captivating even despite that. I will say there's one stretch of kind of longer period where we have, you know, it's not broken up as much. There's maybe one section of the movie where I feel it could have a little bit more punctuated in there to make it a little bit in a bit more kind of, you know, visual, break from the visual, so to speak. But for the most part, I thought it worked. But I can understand why some may find this movie just a little bit. You know, there's not a huge amount happening on screen. It is a kind of a psychological thriller for the most part. The supernatural element, I kind of liked it. I don't know if it was necessary. In some ways, I can see people not liking that element of it. I thought you could have had you could take it out. It doesn't really affect the story. Having it in there, I guess, kind of makes it, you know, more of a horror than well, it doesn't really make it more of a horror. But it kind of puts it under that horror umbrella. But I don't know if it was really necessary, if we're being completely honest. And maybe it could have been a little bit further explored, but it's not really the point of the film. But I don't have much bad things to say about this one, if I'm honest. I mean, I think this movie is very much the best outcome that a film shot like this, with that script, with these actors, could have been. So it's a strong recommend for me. This one's an 8 out of 10. I thought it's a very strong movie, provided you don't mind a character-driven, slow-paced, psychological thriller that I think is quite impactful, but I think fans of, you know, the kind of the serial killer genre, I think will enjoy it. 8 out of 10. Would you see this one? Have you heard about it before? Please do let me know, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.